Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Jacqueline Gibson and I am a traditional astrologer. Today we're taking a look at the upcoming ingress of Uranus into Gemini and breaking down how it will affect all of us as a whole, as well as each of us individually, according to your rising sign. This transit is likely to combine innovation, technological advances, most of them having to do with communication. There's likely to be some changes to our rebellious nature as a whole. So, because of the sign of Gemini being a very communicative sign, that will bring to Uranus, which is a very explosive planet, a new form of rebelliousness in the way that we think and the way that we communicate with others. So, a lot of us are likely to change some of our views during this time or to sharpen them in some way. We may have felt a certain way about things going on in our society, and we might find now that we feel more motivated or passionate about actually saying that, actually communicating it. It might even feel like we don't have a choice. Like it needs to come out. Like it's formed and it's out there. We may also receive communication that changes the way we see our society or revolutionizes it in some way, causing some type of rebellion in many different areas. Some of them having to do with the way that we work, that we communicate with each other. There's likely to be very fast, like explosive jumps forward in technology. There's very likely to be different and new social platforms. I'm hoping for Facebook to go away. We'll see. But even if the platforms themselves stay the same, they will change dramatically. In a nutshell, the way that we associate with each other, the way that we socialize, the way that we engage with one another, the way that we communicate, the way that we get our point across, what we hear, and how we communicate what we have heard is likely to change a lot over the next 8 years. So, overall, with the transit this dynamic, it's a good idea to be open to new ideas, be open to changing your mind, be open to going with the flow to some degree. With outer planet transits, it's not a thing that we can resist, that we can like build up a wall to and just say this change, we're not having it. Uranus in the past has been associated with things like earthquakes and tsunamis. So, and that doesn't mean that you'll be in one. It just means more that if you can think of that on like an emotional level or a shifting your life kind of a level, that's you can't stop a tsunami from coming. So it's not something we want to even try to resist. And it isn't really gentle enough to just say it's as easy as go with the flow. The suggestion would be acceptance, practicing radical acceptance and allowing yourself to change with it. I hope that makes sense. Now let's take a look at how this transit will be affecting you individually according to your rising sign. If you have Gemini rising, the Uranus transit will be going through your first house. This means a likely transformation in your own self identity. That transformation is likely to be pretty radical. There can be shifts in the way that you see yourself as well as the way others perceive you. This is a great time to learn a new language, and you may find yourself like suddenly in a position to learn a new language. Like if that's not something that you've ever thought of before, suddenly that sounds like a great idea, but your communication style is likely to change. So that could mean new language, that could be just the way that you communicate with others. You might find yourself communicating a lot more than you have in the past or in a more public forum. Your behavior may become somewhat eccentric. Roll with it, embrace it. There's not much else you can do. Others seeing you as eccentric may bother you a bit. The purpose of astrology really is to validate what you're going through. And so if you find yourself behaving in ways that appear eccentric to others, you can just tell yourself, I know I'm having a Uranus transit in my first house, so that's okay. They can think what they want. That's none of my business anyway. I'm going to just do what I'm supposed to do through this transit. Again, it's not something we can really hold back, so might as well roll with it. You may find yourself focusing on things like your physical vitality and the way that you express yourself. Again, those are things that you just want to embrace. Some of the outlets recommended for the energy that you'll be feeling during this time are things like martial arts, things that are revolutionary to you, something that you've never done before. So if you've been doing martial arts your entire life, this might be a time to take that to a completely different level. But this could be something completely different for you. This could be, doing things like yoga, joining a sport, whatever the case may be. It'll be about you. It'll be individual to you. So it will be radically different to you, a radically different way to engage with your environment physically than you ever have before. If you have Taurus rising, Uranus will be transiting your second house. And in your second house, which is all about your finances, your income, your stuff, your valuables, this indicates that this is a time when there will be a radical shift in your finances. Because this is such a long transit, that shift is likely to kind of go back and forth, like radically different. I have more money, or I have more ways of making money. Radically different, I have less ways, or that's kind of narrowed for a while. Just like with this transit in any of the houses, you want to roll with it, but you do want to stay open to new ideas, new ways of thinking. It's likely that a lot of new ways of seeing money, of seeing your stuff, of the things that you hold dear, a lot of those perceptions are going to change for you during this time. So you want to just be open to letting go, open to doing things differently, and do your best to stay grounded as far as really out there ideas about how to make money. It doesn't mean that any outside of the box ideas that come to you are a bad thing. It just means be sure, because with Uranus, we want to like immediately, right now, do this change. A lot of times the motivation can feel swift. So you just want to make sure that you keep your feet on the ground, and that dot your I's, cross your T's, check your facts, do everything that you can to make sure that what you're doing is a good idea for you, and that the timing is right for you. Also, with any outer planet going through the second house, you want to watch for that representing like people you might have considered radical in the past, or eccentric, coming to you with new financial ideas. If that's never seemed like a good idea to you in the past, it might seem like a good idea now. Again, the same suggestion applies. Just make sure that you're covering yourself, that you have not overextended yourself. That can sometimes seem like a really good idea when we're being influenced by intense planets, and Uranus is definitely intense. So just be cautious within reason. It's not a time to be fearful, because that sets up resistance, and that's when things can often blow up in our face. So you just want to be mindful, keep your feet on the ground, check your facts before you make any drastic changes to your finances. You might also suddenly feel like either everything's got to go, or I really need a whole lot of stuff and I can't let go of anything. So just be mindful of that. Be kind to yourself and do what feels right, but again, within reason. If you have Aries rising, this transit will be happening in your third house. Your third house is all about communication, the way you communicate, the way you learn, the way you speak, the way you think. So it's also your internal dialogue. Can also have to do with siblings, cousins, and your daily routine. So you may find yourself in a situation where your daily routine is radically changed. You might also find your thinking around certain topics, or many topics, changing drastically over these coming months and years. It's likely that you're going to experience like an influx of a lot of information, but because of this transit, you're prepared to receive that influx of information. So process it as best you can, would be the suggestion, and take note of whatever really, really interests you. Because when there's a flood, like some of it might not be relevant to you, and other things might become relevant you never thought they would be. So the way that you learn is likely to change at this time, and what you're interested in learning is also just as likely to change. This transit could also come in the form of these changes having to do with a sibling. So it may be that, like, for example, like a sibling comes back from school, and when they left, you were on like the same, I don't mean like as far as intelligence or anything like that, but like you thought in the same way. You were coming from the same home, and your thinking was similar. And then they come back after, some kind of learning expedition, whether that was going away to school or just going away and learning something, doing whatever they were doing. And you might find that they're very, very different now. So they are representing like this Uranus transit for you. The suggestion there would just be try not to feel like you've lost this person. It may be that they have something to teach you, and that could be anything from everything that they've learned that they're going to teach you, or it could just be about accepting the changes in someone else, that and it not changing how I feel about them. It might change the dynamics of our friendship or our companionship or our bond in some way, but that doesn't mean that the relationship has to disappear, unless this is a friendship that's the right thing for you, or a relationship where that's the right thing for you. So it's about being open to being flexible. It's about being open to new ideas that you didn't think that you had never thought of before. But you're still allowed to have boundaries, and you're still allowed to take care of yourself first. If you have Pisces rising, this transit is happening in your fourth house. And that means that this transit will be affecting your home life, your family dynamics, and physically where you live the most. There's a strong potential for changing your physical location at this time. You might buy a house, you might sell a house, you might move from one location to another. It doesn't necessarily mean moving to another country, although that's a possibility, but it does mean that you're going to feel very differently about your own foundation right now. And that might have to do with your family dynamics. That could be about, like, your brick and mortar home, your physical home. So maybe your family dynamics are staying the same, but you're changing homes, and that may affect your family dynamics, or it might not. Just depends on how different this change is for you. This transit could also indicate like shifts in what emotional security means for you. You might suddenly realize what emotional security means to you, or you may realize that there are some cracks in that foundation. And so you might learn some new things about creating your own emotional foundation and emotional stability. There's a lot of different dynamics that can happen outside of the fourth house that will cause the changes that are happening in the fourth house. So, people getting different jobs, marriages, growing up, going to college, coming home from college, all of those things can indicate that you change physically where you are. And that can be indicated by this transit, or described to you by this transit. The suggestion for you for this transit is to just stay flexible in your communication. And that's both in what you're saying as well as what you're allowing yourself to hear from others. Again, boundaries are still important, and you are still as entitled to them during this transit as any other time. But if there are places where it would benefit you to be more flexible that you've identified, now is a good time to do it. If you have Aquarius rising, this transit will be happening in your fifth house, which is fun. If this affects your romantic relationships, it's likely that you're going to be attracted to romantic partners that are different from any other time in your life, or what you've been attracted to in the past. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, just means radical shifts to your romantic life. So if you have felt somewhat stagnant in your romantic life, this could be, the perfect transit to have happen now. Perfect timing. There also may be a lot of spontaneity in your romantic life suddenly. So you might not be the kind of person who approaches new people in a romantic way or is very flirtatious, and you might suddenly feel very flirtatious. Again, the reverse is also true. Like, you might be someone who flirts all the time. You might suddenly feel like, I'm going to just sit back and kind of see what happens. So, whatever the difference is, it will be radically different for you individually. Obviously, with a, a transit that is this closely aligned with technology, this could indicate finding romantic partners on dating websites, on dating apps. And if you've had experiences with apps in the past or dating apps in the past, if those experiences had been tedious or just not really producing anything for you, like, this isn't fun for me. I'm not liking the dating app world at all. You might suddenly find that you feel differently, whether that's because of a person that you meet. Maybe you change up your profile, maybe you go on a different dating site, whatever the change is, some type of change brings a new experience in that realm, if that's something that applies to you. You're also likely to feel highly motivated towards some type of creative shift. So if you're already involved in creative pursuits, or like there's a lot of creativity associated with your life or your job in some way, it's likely that right now you're really going to change, kind of revolutionize the way that you create and what you create. So during this time, it's just recommended that you stay open to that change, but as always, with your feet on the ground. If you have Capricorn rising, this transit is going through your sixth house, and a sixth house transit is likely to affect your health routines, your work, your job, and can sometimes indicate changes to your mental health. In astrology, mental health and physical health are a lot more connected than they are in, say, like our insurance coverage and whatnot. So they're not as separate here as they are in the rest of the world. You might really start looking outside of the box for ways of staying healthy, ways of maintaining your own mental or emotional health with the kind of computer, advancement vibe that this transit has. The first thing my head goes to is like EMDR therapy for any kind of trauma. If that's something that you've been thinking of, that's a very Uranus in your sixth house activity or process to undergo. This can also be affecting your work life. And a lot of times, what that looks like is that you radically change the work that you're doing. So, depending on where you are in your career, like if you're just starting out in working, any kind of job is really a radical difference. But if you saw yourself working in a certain field your entire life, you might suddenly feel like that is absolutely not, no way, what I want to do. And I'm going to do this instead. Or outside circumstances might change in such a way that it makes a different type of work more meaningful or more sensible for you. And so you go into a different field than you ever thought you were going to. This is a really good time to make that change, to make that shift. So it doesn't mean, jumping off with no plan, but it does mean that over the next 8 years, you're likely to feel a lot of significant pushes, almost irresistible pushes towards something different. So just try not to panic and manage those shifts as well as you can, and take care of yourself throughout those changes. If you have Sagittarius rising, this transit will be affecting your seventh house. Your seventh house is all about your partnerships, especially romantic partnerships like marriage. It can also indicate open enemies or significant, like, my person relationships that have been ongoing, if those have been the primary relationship in your life. So during this time, you can expect a huge shift in what partnership means to you, in what your partnership looks like. It does not always indicate any kind of breakup. But if we're in a marriage that doesn't suit us, it's not likely to survive this particular transit. And that can be a good thing. Like, if, for instance, I'm not saying this is you, but for instance, if I'm lying to myself that, I'm in the right partnership, it might come to where I'm about to get married and I wasn't even, I was just kind of going with the flow and I wasn't even paying attention. And suddenly I feel this like, whoa, what am I thinking? No, this isn't right for me. If that's the case, it's not like the transit is turning your happy relationship into something unhappy. That was already there. Those feelings were already there. It's just bringing them to the surface and making it impossible for you to deny it. It's like a call to be in a place where I feel free. So remember, that might mean I'm about to get married and what the heck was I thinking and I run, but it could also mean I'm leaving a lot of relationships because I fear commitment. And the radical change is, okay, I'm ready to commit. It can also be that I choose a partner who is completely outside of what I thought I would ever choose. Maybe growing up, I had my ideal, this is what my partner will be. And it turns out the person that I choose is nothing like what I thought. Again, it's not about right or wrong, whether the old idea was the better idea or the new idea is the better idea. That's something that we have to work out for ourselves, but it's likely to happen. This could also mean that the radical changes are coming to you through your partner. So if you've been in a marriage or a significant partnership that's like a marriage for the last 10 years or so, and there's no problems in that marriage, this shift isn't bringing like to the surface that either one of us wants to leave, but there's suddenly my person is experiencing radical change in their life. So you may just experience this transit through your person. And it isn't so much about even the relationship as much as it is accepting that my partner is going through something and how am I going to support and leave room for and freedom for that shift to happen without feeling abandoned or feeling the shift in a negative way, if that makes sense. If you have Scorpio rising, this transit will be happening in your eighth house. The eighth house is all about shared resources, other people's resources. It can be about taxes, debt, investments, and it can also be about trauma and like deep emotional or psychological feelings. So, this transit for you indicates a time when there could be a radical shift in your shared resources. That could be, like one partner may have been the primary breadwinner for a certain amount of time, and that may shift, which might not sound like a really big change necessarily on its surface, but a lot of times that kind of filters down into a lot of our perceptions of the relationship. This isn't likely to bring about something that you have experienced before. This is something new. And if it is something that you've experienced before, something about it will be different. So it's going to bring up a different experience with those shared resources or with the way that you handle investments and your own personal accounting and the way you handle debt. This is also a really good time to do any kind of therapy that has to do with not just changing the way that we see things or not just changing the way that we behave, but really deep down changes. If I've had anxiety around certain topics for as long as I can remember, and maybe those were things that were difficult for me to let go of, you might find that there's some kind of new treatment that you try for that, or even just a radically different type of counselor that you start seeing for that. And suddenly things drastically shift for you. This can also mean like new anxieties coming to the surface or new reactions to trauma coming to the surface. And again, they're not, it's not because of anything we did wrong. It's just now is the time. So it really indicates the timing of it's a good time to treat that. It's a good time to find somebody to help with treating that for me. So the suggestion for this time is a lot of self-reflection. If new anxieties pop up, if new fears pop up, try not to like, oh, I'll just stuff that down and hope it goes away. It's not likely to go away. It's an 8-year transit, and that sounds really uncomfortable. So just be open to allowing yourself to feel, experience whatever's going on internally, and then be open to looking for appropriate counselors and mentors for that. And if this is about money for you, it's just a really good time to be open about how you want resources within your relationship to be used or spent or saved or invested. This isn't a time for secretive spending necessarily. The only case that comes to mind where it would be is obviously if you're trying to get out of a dangerous relationship or a dangerous situation. Again, it's never a good idea to share any future plans if you're in a relationship with somebody who's not safe for you. But it is a good time to make changes to those dynamics and then use those new funds to get out if that applies to you. Other than that, it is a good time to be open, versus hiding anything about the way that we are saving, spending, whatever, if that makes sense. If you have Libra rising, this transit is affecting your ninth house, which is primarily about your beliefs, whether they are political or spiritual or even just intellectual, whatever it is that you believe in. These things are likely to change during this time. Some of those changes may come from long distance travel, which is another thing that this house often represents, or through furthering your education. So you might find yourself pursuing a degree, pursuing a new degree, or pursuing an advanced degree that changes your perspective in some way. You might find yourself in a situation where you want to change what you're pursuing educationally. If you are already in school, you might suddenly make some shifts to what type of classes you're taking or what degree you're pursuing because you might find that your goals have changed. This can also come from the fact that my belief system has changed. Now I may not want to pursue this particular career. This could also be about my beliefs are this way. I thought the career that I was pursuing aligned with those beliefs, but it turns out this is nothing like what I thought. And so now I'm going to radically change the education that I'm pursuing. This may also be a time when your spiritual beliefs change radically, your beliefs about how you see the universe, how you see whatever your higher power is. Could also have to do with like the community that you have found yourself in an attempt or, in just trying to fit with people who have the same beliefs that you do. So, for instance, if you have joined a specific church thinking that, oh, yeah, this is aligned with what I'm into and how I see a higher power or whatever type of spiritual beliefs are appropriate for you. And then it turns out that those people actually, that's not what I believe. Like the environment that I am in is not conducive to the way that I feel spiritually. And so you may find different spiritual pursuits. So that could be finding, if for you, it's always been about outside of the box type of spirituality, you might find yourself wanting something more traditional and vice versa. Just one word of caution, this transit can sometimes indicate things like cults and like groups that are may feel very inspiring at first, but because of that really flexible foundation, you could walk in, it feels very safe and secure, and then suddenly it feels everything, anything but. So just be mindful of, the kind of people that you're following, basically. And it's okay to obviously to find yourself in a situation where you're pursuing completely different spiritual goals than you have in the past. That's fine as long as your boundaries are still respected and you are respecting your own boundaries. If you have Virgo rising, this transit will be happening in your 10th house. And the 10th house is all about career, our public reputation, our public persona, and how the person that we present to the rest of the world. Doesn't have to be like some kind of false mask that we wear. It's just, this is the part of me that is available for the public. And then I have my fourth house stuff, which is more me at home with, you know, my comfortable clothes and no makeup on or whatever applies for you. Maybe I'm someone who's very outspoken in public. And when I get home, I'm kind of quiet. So it's just that difference. You've got your private self and then you've got your public self. It doesn't imply any kind of dishonesty, is the point. But during this transit, you might find that public persona changing drastically. That could look like some type of public recognition or recognition within your career field. That could look like a huge shift in your career or your career goals or pursuits. You might suddenly find yourself in a completely different career path, or you might find yourself like catapulted to a new place in the same career, seemingly overnight. And because it's about the way the public sees this, it may look like overnight success, but you've been working towards this for a very long time. But as far as the public is concerned, it was like you just appeared on the scene. You just got here like yesterday. This can also indicate for some people who are already in the public eye, because it means radical change. You might suddenly not be in the public as much, or you might, like, your public persona might suddenly look like someone who's not in the spotlight all the time, or is more reserved, whereas prior to this transit you felt, in the public eye all the time and very central to the whatever work environment you were in. Again, doesn't mean necessarily anything like a being fired or anything like that. It's just major change. And to others looking at you, it seems like something that happened overnight. It might not even be experienced that way to you, if that makes sense, because this is about what we allow the public to see. So sometimes this can mean the public is seeing a lot more of me than they had before, but it can also mean less. And it can also mean that who my public is radically different, if that makes sense. If you have Leo rising, this transit is affecting your 11th house. The 11th house is all about who our community is, who we see as our community, our friends, if that applies to who your community is. It can also have to do with like social networking, social groups. So this transit indicates a time when all of those things will be shifting dramatically. So you might find yourself with radically different friends than you had in the past. So if in the past you had very conservative friends, you might find yourself having very outspoken, rebellious types of friends. Or it may be that it's the same people, but they've changed radically. Or to you, it feels like they've changed radically. Maybe you had friends who were not willing to, for instance, get involved with politics. And now it seems like everyone you know is involved in some way. That would be a radical shift to your environment that wasn't really like you were deciding to have new friends. It's the same friends, but what they're doing has changed so much. Their activities has changed so much. It feels like your friendship group is different than it was before, almost like it's new people. This can also indicate that you're using technology more to network, or that your social group is changing, shifting, possibly expanding because of the use of social networking, possibly through technology, or groups that you have found that are in person, but that you found them through technology, if that makes sense. Like, I know meetups used to be popular, not so much anymore, but something like that. Like, I found this group through social media, or I found this group online and it actually meets in person, but that's how I found it. So it doesn't necessarily mean like it's an online group. So the suggestion for this transit when it's in your 11th house is primarily to just remain open to any kind of shifts that are happening. And open can just mean I accept it, but this isn't this isn't me. This isn't for me. And so I'm finding a new community to align myself with. Or it might be I'm staying open and what I find is this is for me. And so yes, my social group has changed dramatically, but I still want to be a part of it. And so that changes is influencing me as well. If you have Cancer rising, this transit is happening in your 12th house. The 12th house is all about self sabotage as well as sabotage from others. It's often what's just hidden underneath the surface that we can't really see or get a grasp on, but it's happening or it exists. So it can be those things that are just not revealed to us yet. This transit can sometimes mean really intense and drastically different dreams. So sometimes, especially when this transit is going on for children or young people, it can mean night terrors, but it can also just mean really, really vivid dreams. And maybe if you're like the kind of person that doesn't remember their dreams usually, you might suddenly remember them in detail. And vice versa. You might be the kind of person who remembers your dreams in detail, and all of a sudden, either they've shifted drastically, like they have a completely different tone, or the details are different in some way. This is a good time to make sure that you're getting enough sleep, that you're getting enough rest. You're likely to make some changes to what your self care routine looks like during this time, motivated likely by that need for real rest. And if you're someone who, for whatever reason, has been getting a lot of sleep lately, that may change. You might, maybe it's a new job. Somehow your sleep schedule is just changing a lot. So you may be getting a lot less sleep, or just a completely different sleep. Like if you're generally a night person, maybe now you can't stay up as late, and vice versa. You're a day person and you have to sleep in because you're working later at night, or for some reason you're up later at night. Sometimes hidden fears are uncovered at this time. So you might discover that certain behaviors that you have are actually connected to fears that you didn't know you had, or new behaviors may come up for you. And, like suddenly, so you're like, what is that? Where is that coming from? And through some like self reflection, or, doing some type of counseling work or therapy work, you might find that, oh, that's where that comes from. So it's kind of like you could discover the root, or you might just discover you have the fear. And through working through all of that, you have like this opportunity to live a little bit more freely than you did before. Anytime we're free of a fear, that we like work all the way through it, it doesn't mean we're not afraid anymore. It just means it doesn't bind me as much in some way. An unknown fear, it's weird because an unknown fear can have more power over you than when you know about. Like once you see it, it's not so scary kind of thing. So if that comes up for you, it's definitely recommended to do whatever work is appropriate for that, so that you can get to the other side of that. And it's very likely that that's going to come about for you during this time. Thank you for watching today's breakdown of the Uranus transit through Gemini. I hope what you heard here will help you to make good choices in the coming months and years. If you're interested in a more personal look at your chart, you can schedule a session with me using the link below in the description box. And also, if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And I'd love to hear your questions, comments, concerns in the comments box as well. Until next time, have a fabulous day and take really good care of you.